Tonight on the all-night drive-in picture show.
Is there a way around the bridge?
There's a way. The trail. But the trees, Ash. Hey, no. Don't you see, Ash? They're alive!
Then...
I'm all right.
Maybe you are. But for how long? If we're gonna beat this thing, we need those pages.
Then let's head down into that cellar and carve ourselves a witch.
And now, here are your projectionists. Their film degree is from FU, Ryan Mason and Charles Wood.
Welcome to the all-night drive-in picture show. I'm Booberry, that's Count Chocula.
Hello.
Let's open the crypt and get to the movies.
Attention patrons. The movies discussed on this podcast will be spoiled from start to finish. If you wish to experience these cinematic gems visually, please do so before continuing with this episode. We will be right here when you return. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
And now, please enjoy our featured presentation.
The hills are alive with the Necronomicon. This is The Evil Dead.
I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods, and I have no doubt that whatever I have resurrected through this book is sure to come calling for me.
Did something in the woods do this to you?
No, it was the woods themselves. They're alive, Ashley. The trees, they're alive.
You will die like the others before you. One by one, we will take you.
Ash, I don't want to die. You're not going to leave me, are you, Ash? Are you?
I don't want to die. You're not going to leave me here, are you? Are you, Ash?
Oh, you bastards. Why are you torturing me like this? Why?
Evil Dead.
I fear that the only way to stop those possessed by the spirits of the book is through the act of bodily dismemberment.
Fog fills the screen as the opening credits begin. After the title ripples up on screen, the camera rises over the fog bank and we're in a swamp. The camera hovers just above the water as it swoops back and forth, and the POV shot makes us feel like we're some sort of entity. Then we see a car driving up a hill. There are 5 people inside, 2 men and 3 women. Shelley, played by Teresa Tilley, sings in the passenger seat, while Scott, played by Richard de Manencourt, drives. In the back seat sits Cheryl, played by Ellen Sandweiss, Linda, played by Betsy Baker, and Ashley Ash J. Williams, played by Bruce Campbell.
He's the only character to get a full name.
Do what?
He's the only character to get a full name.
Yeah.
It's like a full...
Ashley Ash J. Williams.
So weird.
It's weird in this movie, too, just knowing him as Ash, after the second movie, really.
Right.
That he's called Ashley a few times in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, who's Ashley? Oh, it's Ash. Okay.
Well, and one thing, too, is like when we get to later on, if shit starts going down, I don't know if they're really demons, but we will refer to them as Demon Scott, Demon such and such,
Yeah.
just kind of set the stage while we're talking about character names.
Right.
That's what's gonna happen.
And we know that they're called the Deadites, but, for
Yeah.
For the sake of distinguishing them from one another, we call them demon so-and-so.
You say Deadite Linda over and over, bud.
Deadite Linda.
Deadite Linda, Deadite Linda, Deadite Linda.
After a few lines, Scott starts singing along with Shelley. Then something happens. The entity from the swamp is now moving over a leaf-littered hill in the woods, and it seems to be on a collision course with both the car and a huge pickup called Lazy Mary is heading down the road in the opposite direction. The car, the truck, and the entity converge, and the car's steering wheel whips out of Scott's hands momentarily. He regains control, just narrowly avoiding a head-on collision with the pickup. Ash and Scott argue about how shitty Ash's car is. Scott claims that the only thing that really works is the horn, and he blasts it. They pass a couple of locals waving from the side of the road, and Scott leans out the window and tells them to go to hell. He ain't honking at them.
God, what a dick.
Sets the stage for this guy. He's a total dick throughout the whole movie. They talk about the cabin they're heading to as Scott steers with one hand and drinks from a mason jar with the other. Nothing like a little moonshine while joyriding through them there hills.
Apparently, this was shot in Tennessee because Tennessee actually had a film commission that was really helpful. And their film commission rep did actually help the cast and crew procure some moonshine. And they tried it. And according to Bruce Campbell, it was a pretty harrowing experience.
I imagine.
They all had kind of a different description of its taste. One of them said it basically just tasted like turpentine.
I was going to say, yeah, I've always heard paint thinner, but yeah.
Yeah. Also, the roaming effect here that the entity, I always call it the entity. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
I think they might call it the Force or something, but
Whatever.
I thought if we started calling it the Force, we get into Star Wars territory.
Yeah.
But the roaming entity effect, I guess, was accomplished by something that Campbell called the shaky cam in his memoir. His memoir is called If Chins Could Kill. If you get a chance to read it, definitely read it.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a really kind of a fun book. And I guess they basically just screwed the camera down to a 3-foot wide 2x6 board. And it had a wide angle lens on the camera. And then the cameraman just held the board at each end and ran like hell, just zipped through as fast as he could. And the opening in the swamp, that kind of looked similar, but going over the water, I guess, was just Sam Raimi with, I guess the camera was taped to his hand. And he was leaning out of a raft while Campbell was actually, I guess, in the water pushing the raft.
Wow. I'd always heard the shaky cam was the camera strapped to a wheelchair.
Well, they did use a wheelchair for some tracking shots.
Yeah.
And then they also had this other thing called the Vasocam, I think, which was for if they needed a smoother kind of dolly shot. The Vasocam was weird because it was like this board on these sawhorses, and the top of it had, I think it has like electrical tape or duct tape on it, and then that had Vaseline on it so that the little bracket with the camera on it would slide, seem like, smoothly across it.
Yeah.
So they had a few of these. I'll point out some of the other ones as we go on. But yeah, they did use a wheelchair for some shots. They just couldn't use the wheelchair in the woods and stuff. So they used this shaky cam thing that was just like a board. Basically.
Just watching this movie, there's some clever filmmaking in this.
There really is.
Yeah.
There really, really is.
Raimi was ahead of his time on a lot of different things.
He really was. It's kind of interesting how he sets the tone for a lot of like horror staples that will come up in the next 30 years after this movie was made.
Scott says that the guy renting the cabin said it's a little run down, but it's cheap and it's in the mountains. It becomes clear that no one has actually seen the joint. It could be an abandoned mine for all they know.
Yeah, they could have used, I don't know, Airbnb or maybe just call somebody up. But why did he?
Is there an app for deserted cabins in the woods?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yourdeath.com.
Right.
What? Scott talked to the guy too. So the guy didn't tell him, oh, it's the cabin or he just didn't really ask for anything.
Yeah.
I'm kind of lost.
And it's not like he's renting this cabin either. They're pretty much breaking and entering, right? Because
well, Scott does know that the key ring is above the door.
That's true, I guess. Yeah.
Which is a very weird key ring. I don't know. We'll get into it. I love this movie. It's
right.
It's just there's a lot of stuff is very specific.
Yes. They turn to go toward the cabin and see a warning sign about the bridge up ahead. As they cross the old wooden bridge, slats fall off of it and splash into the water below. Just as Scott claims the bridge is solid as a rock, one of their tires breaks through, and they're stuck for a second. Then the car gets out of the hole and they move on through the woods.
I love the cutting in this sequence and the camera angles. Some of it is really noticeable and kind of by the numbers editing and shot composition, but it creates this tone that's really nightmarish and really effective.
Right.
Everything just feels so odd and unreal. Mm-hmm. And I love that the shot that hovers above and behind the car as it makes the final approach to the cabin.
Right.
I just love that. I guess that when they showed this movie in East Lansing, Michigan, they had a screening there. And I think that was the place where they had rented this big place that was like an old movie palace type place. It would seat like 1,000 people. And they filled the damn thing up.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was after that screening that one of Raimi's former teachers, who I think had some equipment that Raimi used back in the day to make short films and stuff. This guy just was so disappointed in Raimi because he said, there's just crazy shot after crazy shot. Like, you can't have that and be successful. I think that guy was 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Because this movie, from the very beginning, the tone is so different, and the eye of the movie is just so different.
Right.
Like, the POV is so different. It feels like a nightmare. And the thing is because it's a low-budget movie, creating that tone up front is brilliant, because what it helps you do is it helps you get the audience to forgive some of the inconsistencies and things that come along with low-budget filmmaking later on.
Yeah. There were so many directors that were influenced by this movie, too, and by Sam Raimi's early work. Edgar Wright has got to be one of those disciples, because the majority of his movies are fast edits and quick shots, and just... is very reminiscent of what we're looking at in this movie. Right.
They influenced a lot of people in other ways with this movie, too. I mean, the Coen brothers probably wouldn't have made Blood Simple without this movie.
Right.
Because they pre-sold this movie by making a short that was kind of set in the same place and had some of the same elements in it, story-wise, and made that movie and used it as a sales pitch tool, just like the Coens did with Blood Simple. In fact, I think Raimi and Campbell was actually in the short film that was used to sell Blood Simple.
Yeah.
So, and Joel Coen was the assistant editor on this movie. So, Ethan Coen actually delivered the print to that East Lansing screening we were talking about. So, I mean, they were there. And then I think in the second movie, we can talk more about how the Coens, or at least being around the Coens and some of their famous friends who weren't famous at the time, influenced the second movie. But yeah, like, this movie is actually very influential, and it's, I don't know, I don't really hear a lot of people saying, oh, Evil Dead was the first time that I thought to do this or this or this, but it's definitely one of the...
It's gotta be, though.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's kind of like a background influencer.
They pull up and park a little ways from the cabin. The porch swing bangs loudly against the front of the house, and the 5 weary travelers get out and survey the accommodations. Scott approaches the front door alone as the others stand back and watch. He's cautious for some reason. Maybe because the place looks like a witch's hovel in some dark fairy tale. He glances at the swing as he steps onto the porch. It's swinging back and forth really hard, like an invisible hand is pushing it from side to side. Scott feels around on the top of the door pane until he finds the house key ring. As soon as he lays hands on the ring, the swing stops moving. It's stock still now. The others are still standing back by the car watching. Scott keeps a wary eye on the swing as he tries the various keys in the door until he finds the right one. The cabin door opens and it's a smoky, dusty old mess up in there. Scott flips on the light and walks around the room, stopping to stare at the clock on the wall. Outside, the others are happily unloading the trunk, while Scott explores the barn shed out back. It's got various animal bones and tools and chains hanging everywhere. It's like Leatherface's summer house or something.
This place is scary.
Yeah.
Even without the dark shadows and all the lighting and stuff. I mean, as soon as they show it, if I'm in the traveling party here, I'm thinking, okay, we made it. Now let's get the hell out of here.
Exactly.
Like, I'm ready to turn around and go back.
Why do I feel like that bridge isn't going to make it? We better get going.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, actually, as soon as the tire goes through the bridge, I'm thinking, okay, well, let's just put it in reverse. Like, we can just get back across here. And, or actually, I'll get out and just go over here and wait, and you get the car back across. But this cabin's perfect for this movie. I mean, it wasn't the original choice for setting. They had another place that fell through right before they started shooting. And they had to go around and scout other locations at the very last minute. I don't know what this movie would be without this location.
Right.
So in that way, I feel like this movie and the next movie, we could, once we talk about Evil Dead 2, we could get into it. But these two movies, I feel like, share similar things with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, definitely.
In that, in this movie, you can feel the hardship on screen. I mean, they kind of laugh about the torture of making this movie and how hard it was and kind of things that they had to do. But, you know, pretty much all the actors that were in this, besides Bruce Campbell, either left acting completely or left it for a while. It took them a while to get back into it again.
Yeah.
Because it was a brutal experience.
Later, the sun goes down and all the guests are in various parts of the cabin doing their thing. Cheryl sketches the aforementioned wall clock. Suddenly, the clock's pendulum stops at an angle and it chimes 8 times, even though it reads 5:52. Impossible, son. The window right next to Cheryl is open, and now the sheer curtains are fluttering in the wind. And it sounds like a low voice is chanting along with the score. Cheryl tries to ignore the rising wind, but then her hand turns gray and she begins scrawling something on her sketch pad. She can't control the hand. She's pushing so hard that it tears the paper. When all is said and done, she has made a crude drawing of a book with a face. Whoa. Then shit gets weird as she notices the cellar door and the floor start moving up and down, as if someone is trying to come upstairs. Oh, and there's a rusty chain and a broken locking ring on the door, too. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong here.
Everything's fine. Everything's normal.
I love it. Then shit gets weird.
Yeah, right. As if her hand turning gray and her not being able to control what she's doing.
Yeah, the clock.
Yeah. Cheryl looks frightened as we cut to a blender. It's dinner time now, and Scott is quietly making fun of Cheryl's experience because he can't get enough of being an asshole. Ash makes a toast, but then the gang hear a loud bang from the living room. They go in and the cellar hatch is wide open. They argue about what could have opened it for a few seconds before Scott goes down to investigate. After he's incommunicado for a little bit, Ash goes down to find Scott. The cellar is dank. Stone and cinder block walls, an old wooden door, cobwebs, bare bulbs, and leaky pipes. Ash creeps toward the door and opens it. It creaks loudly, and Ash glances around before Scott jumps up in front of him. Asshole! Scott shows Ash a workbench with a weird collection of stuff on it. A shotgun with a box of shells, a document of some sort, a reel-to-reel recorder, and a bizarre book that looks suspiciously like the one Cheryl drew earlier. This little volume is the Book of the Dead.
Hello.
Ash flips through his yellowed pages. They contain odd, seemingly occult drawings.
And it's available on Amazon.
Sure is. Complete with flesh cover.
If it's not on your Barnes & Noble bookshelf, ask him to order it.
Meanwhile, Scott finds some sort of ceremonial dagger with an intricately carved handle. He tells Ash to help him take the stuff upstairs as he grabs the recorder. Scott heads up while Ash continues flipping through the small book. He finds a full-color drawing of the book itself.
Now, did you notice The Hills Have Eyes?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so The Hills Have Eyes poster, I guess that in The Hills Have Eyes, in one of the scenes, maybe in the trailer, Wes Craven had put they say Wes Craven, the production designer, whoever, had put a torn Jaws poster in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so Raimi and Campbell and those guys thought that was Wes Craven saying, oh, well, Jaws, you think that's scary. Like, this is real horror. This is, like, really scary.
Yeah.
And so they did that with the Hills Have Eyes poster to kind of get back at Craven.
Yeah.
Craven then, after this, would go on in Nightmare on Elm Street. At one point when Nancy's trying to stay awake, she's watching Evil Dead on the television.
That's great.
Then, as we'll see in Evil Dead 2, they put Freddy's glove somewhere in the movie.
Right.
So
yeah, on the tool shed door.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. Right over the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably a good place, too, to kind of talk just a little bit about where the story comes from.
Okay.
So Sam Raimi he said he had two different courses in college. One was an ancient history course, and the other one was either a creative writing course or something where he came across a scary story that took place out in the woods. And in the ancient history course, I think they were talking about the Book of the Dead. And so this was at Michigan State University. And so he kind of just put the two things together when he was thinking about an idea for a movie. So, which I thought was kind of interesting, because it's kind of interesting to hear some guys say, well, yeah, I just kind of pulled these two things together. I mean, last week we talked about the Cannon Group. They did this, but on a much more irresponsible scale.
Sure, yeah.
You know, Flashdance meets The Exorcist meets a ninja movie. Ladies and gentlemen, Ninja 3 The Domination. We're going to get there.
A rock opera about creation.
Set 1994.
Oh, God.
God.
Later, lightning strikes a tree and the gang is in the living room yucking it up.
They no-sell that.
I know. Ash cues up a tape on the reel-to-reel.
It has been a number of years since I began excavating the ruins of Kandar with a group of my colleagues. Now my wife and I have retreated to a small cabin in the solitude of these mountains. Here I continued my research undisturbed by the myriad distractions of modern civilization and far from the groves of academe. I believe I have made a significant find in the Kandarian ruins, a volume of ancient Sumerian burial practices and funerary incantations. It is entitled Naturan de Manto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. It deals with demons, demon resurrection, and those forces which roam the forest and dark bowers of man's domain. The first few pages warn that these enduring creatures may lie dormant, but are never truly dead. They may be recalled to active life through the incantations presented in this book. It is through recitation of these passages that the demons are given license to possess the living.
Cheryl turns it off. Scott protests, but it's evident that he's freaked just like everyone else. He puts on a brash face, mocking them with ghostly noises. He turns the tape back on and shit goes south. The next passage is an incantation, and it seems to echo through the woods and cause something to rise out of the ground. A mound of leaves starts shaking and lifts up, and a red glow shines from underneath. Meanwhile, Cheryl is coming unglued. She begs Scott to shut off the tape, but he won't. Finally, she stands up and screams for him to shut it off as a tree branch bursts through a cabin window. Somehow the tape shuts off.
Scott's like, okay, cool.
Okay. Ash gives Scott hell for being an asshole, but Scott doubles down on being a dick. Ash removes the tree and drops the shutter on the window. Later, Ash tells Linda he's going to stay up and listen to the storm. While she goes back to check on Cheryl, he grabs a small gift for Linda and pretends to be asleep on the couch. She takes it and opens it. It's a necklace with an opaque glass pendant. As they kiss each other, some low-voiced something is lurking outside the cabin, stalking from window to window. It goes to Scott and Shelley's bedroom window where they're both undressing. Then it goes to Cheryl's bedroom where she is sitting at the vanity brushing her hair. Cheryl looks at the scrawled drawing of the book she made earlier. Then she looks out the window. She can sense something. Ooh. Cheryl goes out the back door and yells into the darkness. Then she wanders out into the woods, because that's a great idea.
What?
Yelling for whoever she thinks is out there.
Yeah. You scare me. Come here a second.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the safety of this room, and I'm going to go and just make myself 100% vulnerable.
Yeah. I might even leave. I might even close the back door. I don't know.
Maybe I'll lock it behind me.
I
should. Have to fiddle for a key later.
I should probably do that. Then go around front, try to find the key.
White people are stupid.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Suddenly there are loud growls and noises all around her. The entity is rushing through the woods, knocking down trees. Out of nowhere, vines and branches shoot out at Cheryl from all directions, binding her limbs and tearing off her clothes. Oh. The tree, well, the tree rapes her. Oh. She breaks free and stumbles through the woods as the entity chases her. I remember seeing this movie for the first time, and when that tree branch goes between her legs, I was like, good Lord.
Oh, man, that was rough.
No kidding.
That was so rough.
Yeah.
I think they cut that out in the UK completely.
I don't doubt it.
I can't really blame them either. I think that there are ways you could have shown her getting, because she gets scratched up by the vines and stuff.
Yeah, they're like penetrating her skin.
I don't know.
Ugh.
All right.
She finally makes it back to the house, but the door's locked. She tries to pull the key ring down from above the door, but it's stuck. The entity gets closer and closer as she fumbles with the keys. She drops the keys, but Ash has opened the door and gets her inside.
What the hell happened to you? Cheryl, what's the matter with you? Did something in the woods do this to you?
No, it was the woods themselves. They're alive, Ashley. The trees. They're alive.
Ash, why don't I take her in the back room so she can lie down?
I'm not lying down. I want to get out of here. I want to leave this place right now. Right now, Ashley.
Wait a minute. I sure as hell am not leaving any place tonight.
Cheryl.
Look, Cheryl, there's nothing out there. Trees do not attack people.
Ashley, will you drive me into town or not?
What, right now? Yeah, look, sure, I'll take you into town, but just listen to what you're saying.
I don't care how it sounds. I want to get out of this place right now.
Okay, you can stay somewhere in town tonight, huh?
Why is the key ring back on top of the door?
I wondered the same thing.
I mean, why would they have that inside?
Yeah.
I don't. The thing is that though, like we were talking about earlier, like stuff like this could be considered a logic error.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at this through the frame of a nightmare,
yeah,
then it makes sense,
right?
Because that the key ring itself is so kind of big and weird and specific.
Yeah, it's like a jailer's key ring or something.
Yeah, it's just it's like not quite as huge as what you would maybe associate with a jailer's key ring, but it's fairly big.
Yeah.
And then to just have it up there like that, it just feels like dream logic, I guess.
It does.
I mean, I think she could bang on the door just as well as trying to fumble with the keys.
Right.
But whatever, you know.
Ash and Cheryl go out to the car as the others watch from the porch. Damn car won't start. So much for that pre-trip tune-up, eh, Ash? Cheryl says she knows it's not going to start because it's not going to let them leave. But then the car starts right up. Ash stops the car right before they reach the bridge. He gets out and walks off into the darkness. Cheryl calls after him and then follows. She can't find Ash, but she does find the mangled remains of an old bridge. It is impassable. She fights him off, yelling that she told him it's not going to let them leave.
The lighting in this sequence is excellent. In this little sequence, like, I like the bright light behind Scott and Linda and Shelley where they're standing on the porch watching Cheryl and Ash go to the car.
Yeah.
It's so weird. I mean, it's like a spotlight from inside the house.
Right.
There's no light source in the house that should be showing that. You know, it just doesn't exist in there.
Yeah.
And yet, again, it feels like a Dream Logic thing. It's just there.
Right.
And it's so crazy. I also like the little scuffle in the headlights, you know, when Cheryl and Ash are fighting with each other.
Yeah.
I like the way that's lit. I just think that looks really cool.
Yeah, it does.
I also like the floodlights back at the house that are up on the edges of the porch. And they show down like in front of the porch at different times in the movie. I love that. I just think that's really smart to light it that way and try to find... Because the thing is, I like the way Raimi mixes natural placed sourced lights with unnatural lights. Mm-hmm. Like the spotlight coming from inside the house behind Scott and Linda and Shelley in this sequence.
Yeah.
Mixed with the headlights and the floodlights. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's very
it's just
cool.
really cool.
Then we're back at the cabin, and Scott's out chopping wood in the middle of the night. The others are inside. Cheryl watches Scott make himself useful for once, while Ash listens to more of Professor Happy Pants reel-to-reel tapes with an earbud.
I know now that my wife has become host to a Kandarian demon. I fear that the only way to stop those possessed by the spirits of the book is through the act of bodily dismemberment. I would leave now to avoid this horror, but for myself, I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods, and I have no doubt that whatever I have resurrected through this book is sure to come calling for me.
Linda and Shelley play around with a deck of cards. Shelley holds a card up, and Linda tries to guess which one it is. Shelley is messing with Linda, making her think she's psychic, even though she doesn't guess either card correctly. But then Cheryl starts guessing cards, even though she's still staring out the window. She guesses one after another correctly until her voice changes into a demon growl. Cheryl turns to the others, and she's milky-eyed and blue-lipped. She's possessed, son! She's a megaphone for the entity now. She levitates in front of the window, and the others cower from her.
Why have you disturbed our sleep? Awakened us from our ancient slumber. You will die! Like the others before you. One by one we will take you.
You bet your ass they will. Then Cheryl falls to the floor, seemingly out. As Ash checks on her, she grabs a pencil from the floor and bolts upright and stabs Linda in the heel.
Oh, God.
It's like right below the ankle. That soft spot. Oh, God, it's
right
gross.
around the Achilles.
And she just digging it in, too, just wrenching it in there. Oh, God, it's gross.
It is.
And then she throws Linda and Ash around. Scott wrestles her down into the cellar. She fights back, and every time she comes up out of the darkness, she gets older and older, her hair getting whiter and whiter. But he finally shuts the hatch door and chains it up.
As we go on in the movie, there will be tons of makeup effects on all these actors, to one degree or another. But probably the weirdest effect in this movie, and probably the most painful, is the Scalero contact lenses that they used. And I guess they didn't have any running water at this cabin, right? And these contacts, they can only be in for 15 minutes at a time. And the optometrist said you could only take them out and put them back in 5 times a day.
Oh, Lord.
And they weren't really adhering to the 15-minute rule all the time. But the thing about it was, since they didn't have any running water, the person who was helping the actor put these in and take them out more than likely would have dirty hands.
Ugh.
So it was really kind of a brutal thing. And they also didn't have a waiting room, right? And they didn't have like a room where they would put on makeup. So the actors, once they got into all this makeup when they become the undead or whatever, they would actually have to come to the set in full makeup. So they would get their makeup on back at the house where they were living, come to the set, and then they would be sitting out on a log outside for 3, 4, 5 hours or whatever while scenes are being shot that they weren't in.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of a mess that way. The other thing in this sequence I think is really interesting is there's another homegrown apparatus that's used to make Cheryl float. Mm-hmm. So it's not wires. It's actually this thing they called the elevator. She's like either strapped or harnessed to this board. And the board was then attached to a lung, like a 2x4.
Yeah.
And the 2x4 actually went through the window, and the window had black material over it to make it look like it was just dark outside.
Huh.
And then the board that went through was actually seesawed on a sawhorse, and it had a couple of people on the outside that, of course, they call shimps, because the whole shimp thing. If you read Bruce Campbell's memoir, you'll know about the fake shimp. But they had a couple of shimps out there, like, moving it up and down to make her look like she was floating.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, there's a diagram, actually. There are a diagram of quite a few of these things in Bruce Campbell's memoir.
Yeah.
That it looks like somebody just hand drew them, and it's really, really kind of interesting, kind of the ingenuity that they showed trying to make some of these effects happen. But
the makeup effects are pretty decent in this movie. There's some really good ones, and there's some that are not so great.
Yeah.
It greatly improves by Evil Dead 2. But one thing you notice if you look closely when she's grabbing for the pencil, you can actually see the latex apparatus that's on her hand.
Yeah.
Where it's supposed to be glued down tightly to her hand, but it really isn't.
Yeah.
Just looks like a clump on top of her hand, basically.
I think the thing about it, though, too, is that with this movie, I really like that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know how I usually notice details like that.
Yeah.
But for me, I think the dream logic thing takes over, and my eye just kind of glosses over that stuff.
Yeah.
And I look at it as kind of like, okay, something's not real. What if these people are wearing makeup? What if they're not really wait a minute. No, they're demons. No, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I kind of surrender myself to this movie in a way that honestly I don't with Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we'll get to Evil Dead 2, but I love this movie much more than Evil Dead 2. I'm not really a fan of Evil Dead 2, but
do you love it more than Revenge of the Ninja?
Wow.
Because you really love that movie.
We're in Ernest Goes to Jail territory here.
Camp.
I don't know, man.
Why can't you get that right?
It's your Southern prison movies. I thought hillbilly prison movies. I'm sorry.
I'm going to say this one last time.
I do love this more than Revenge of the Ninja.
Ernest Goes to Camp.
I will say this one more time. I don't care. I'll still probably say Ernest Goes to Jail.
Later, Ash checks on Linda, who's asleep in the bedroom. Demon Cheryl is still trying to get out of the cellar. She's got the hatch door pushed up, and she's watching Scott, Shelley, and Ash plan their escape at daybreak. Shelley loses her shit and yells about Demon Cheryl's eyes. Then we're back out in the woods, and there's another something out there, and it's headed for the homestead. Shelley tells Scott there's something brewing, but he tells her to go to bed. She does go into the bedroom, but the new entity bursts through the window and kidnaps Shelley. Scott investigates and finds nothing, but then he starts hearing noises, first from the inside of the closet and then from the bathroom. He checks the closet and the tub, still nothing. But as he turns around, he gets demon scratched. Shelley's clawing his face.
Oh, man.
Scott busts into the living room and Shelley is all over him like a cheap suit. He careens around the room before dumping Demon Shelley headfirst into the fireplace. Her head catches fire, but Scott, being brilliant and all, pulls her out. She thanks him and then continues attacking him.
I love that.
Ash tries to help, but Demon Shelley catapults him into a shelf. That's like the second or third shelf he's crashed into so far.
Yeah.
He's more like a stuntman in this movie and, kind of a straight guy. In the next movie, he's like Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, he's a one-man show. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Demon Cheryl is watching from under the cellar hatch and going apeshit. Demon Shelley grabs the ceremonial dagger and tries to stab Scott with it, but he holds her arm. He grabs a knife from the back of his belt and cuts into her wrist. She cracks his neck with one hand and then chews through her wounded wrist. Her hand drops to the floor, still clutching the dagger. Ugh.
Yeah.
That seems gross.
Yeah.
Ugh. Scott snatches up the dagger with her hand still attached.
Yes.
And stabs Demon Shelley in the back. She screams and warbles as the dagger begins to smoke. She falls back on the dagger and then convulses as a milky substance shoots from her mouth and wrist stump. Ash and Scott look at each other. Ash holds an axe like it's his new girlfriend as Scott walks by Demon Shelley's body. As he passes, she suddenly springs back to life and grabs him. Scott takes the axe from Ash and starts wailing on Demon Shelley until she is broken up into twitching pieces. Scott drops the axe.
Yeah? What are we gonna do?
We're gonna bury her.
You can't bury Shelley. She's a friend of ours.
Ash, she's dead. Shelley's dead. We gotta bury her now.
That shot of him saturated in blood red is so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. I think there's a variation of that comes up again later with Ash, but it's interesting how all these stylistic choices just seem to work together in this movie.
Yeah.
Like the Dutch angles, the tracking shots, the POV stuff, the upside down shots, shots like this one, the stop motion and matte work that we'll see later on. They seem like they shouldn't work together, but they do. And it all pulls us into this nightmare where it's interesting that this movie is still scary and we're both the hunters and the hunted in it.
Right.
Which I find really fascinating. One thing, when the entity crashes through the window earlier, like in the bedroom, and grabs Shelley, that was another little invention called the Ramo Cam, which was basically one person would be carrying the camera, rushing towards the window, and another person had this pole that had a little board teed on the end of it. And that board would be in front of the camera, but above the camera, but just out of frame. And it would smash through the window right before the camera got there to make it look like the camera did it. So inventive. Just
a lot
like
of ingenuity in this.
Yeah. The shot here of her dismembered body twitching on the floor like those pieces, that was actually the producer, Rob Tappert, and the actress. And they built like a false floor. They were hidden under the floor. And they were just kind of like twisted together, and he would play some of her limbs, and she was playing others, and of course she was playing her head. But I guess they were wedged under the floorboards for hours before they actually got the shot.
Jeez.
And Campbell was the one that actually said, he was like, look, we might as well just shoot this. We're finally, because they were complaining. And she was like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is, starting to hurt.
Yeah.
He's like, we already got it. Let's just get the shot. Being, of course, a Menachem Golan type guy.
Right.
Do it, then die,
Yeah. Scott and Ash carry Demon Shelley out in a sheet and bury her. Later, the guys are back inside, and there's yet another damn demon roaming the woods. Or it could be the original demon. Good Lord, who knows, right? But it ain't good. Scott insists that they leave, but Ash says Linda can't move with that leg. She's got a pencil lead broke off in that limb. Scott says he doesn't care about her, and Ash can stay behind with her.
What an asshole.
Every scene, man.
What an asshole.
Asshole.
Why can't this guy be the one to go first? I just can't.
No kidding. We'd all be better off for it.
Oh.
Scott heads out. Demon Cheryl taunts Ash from the cellar.
Soon, all of you will be like me. And then who will lock you up in the cellar?
She's fun.
She is fun. Yeah. Barrel of monkeys. Ash goes into the bedroom and checks on Linda again. She's still asleep. He pulls the covers up and checks her foot. The wound still looks fresh. Then, suddenly the blood spiderwebs out across her foot and she shoots up in bed. We now have Demon Linda in the house. She laughs like a deranged Cupid doll, and Ash stumbles out of the room and out the back door. He stands there watching to see if his demon girlfriend will follow, but then Scott falls all over Ash. Apparently the trees kicked old Scott's ass. He's all messed up. Clothes torn, huge gash in the back of his leg, compound fracture in his arm, face all sliced up.
It could happen to a nicer guy.
Oh, shit. Ash helps him inside while Demon Linda sits cross-legged in the doorway chuckling at Scott's misfortune. Creepy as shit.
I know, and I'm with her.
Yeah.
She's chuckling. I'm like, yeah, I'm with Demon Linda here.
He's just trying to tend to him, and she's just sitting there all possessed.
Well, and you know what? Like
It's
that right there, that's an image that tell me,
yeah.
Can you even count how many movies have used that image?
Yeah.
I mean,
the way she's like robotically moving her head when she's laughing.
Yeah, and she's sitting there, eyes wide open, milky white, and she's sitting on the floor in a cross-legged position, kind of in this like nightgown.
Yeah.
Beyond this, the first time I remember seeing something like that
right.
in the more modern era was The Others, I think.
Yeah.
The old lady, they come up behind her and she turns around.
Yeah.
But to me, this image, if you look at this, you could see this in pretty much any horror film out there right now.
Yeah.
Somebody's shooting it as we're speaking right now. Somebody's shooting a variation on this scene.
Ash sets Scott on the couch and tells him he's going to be okay. Yeah, that could be considered a slight fib.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have morphine. We can't tell those kinds of lies without morphine. So
your bone's sticking out of your arm. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, you're going to be fine. Does this hurt, sir?
You definitely won't bleed to death. Don't worry about that. Ash throws another log on the fire as Scott says that Cheryl is right. It won't let them leave, and they're all going to die there. Ash goes back over to him and shakes him and says they're not going to die.
So it took the Woods kicking Scott's ass for him to believe Cheryl's story.
Right.
Okay, very well. Asshole.
Yeah.
I can't stand this guy, Scott, but I winced every time Ash jostled him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that guy's got a bone sticking out of his arm. Like, ease up, my brother.
Right.
We need to just, we don't have Tylenol in the house. But I did laugh when Ash slapped Scott to wake him up.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. It's just like slapping the shit out of him.
Wake up, asshole.
Yeah.
Ash asks if there's a way around the bridge as Scott begs Ash not to leave him. Oh, so now it's never leave a buddy behind, right, Scotty?
Right, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Scott.
Now that's a score.
Yeah. Scott finally says that there's a trail, but the trees know about it because they're alive.
Oh, you sure?
All the while, the demon girls are giggling away. Ash slaps Demon Linda a couple times, trying to get her to stop laughing, but nothing doing. Finally, Scott says Ash should kill her. Ash picks up a shotgun and aims it at Demon Linda, but she drops her head. When she rises, her face is normal and she's crying. She begs Ash to help her and they hug each other. Then Cheryl's voice comes up from the cellar. She says she's okay and asks Ash to let her out. He crouches down and opens the hatch a little, but then Demon Cheryl's back and she clutches his collar. And now Demon Linda is back and singing.
Shut up!
We're gonna get you, not another peep. Time to go to sleep.
Ash grabs Demon Linda by the feet and drags her out the front door. She's screaming hellfire and bloody murder at him as he drops her out in the leaves. A black cloud crosses a red moon as Ash tries to give Scott some nice yellow well water.
Oh, God.
Ash says that the sun will be up soon and they'll all get out of there. Well, most of them anyway. Yeah. He pours the water into Scott's mouth, but it just dribbles down Scott's face because that man is dead, at least for now.
Yep.
Ash hears Demon Linda cackling and a wolf howling outside. He goes to the window and looks out. All he sees is a tree, his car, and more fog. He turns back from the window to see Demon Linda. Holy shit, where'd she come from? She cuts his arm with the ceremonial dagger and then licks the blood off the blade. And that's not even seductive looking, too. That's just like...
No, it's just like, give me a little bit of that.
That's gross. They tussle, and Demon Cheryl even grabs his leg when they get close to the cellar hatch. Demon Linda ends up falling on the dagger, and you guessed it, is spitting up milky white shit. That's some 2%, son.
That's right. No skim. This is a high-dollar production.
That's right. In the ruckus, Scott's body has been thrown to the floor. Ash drags Demon Linda out into the shed and chains her up. Then he fires up a chainsaw to cut her up, but her face is normal again, and he sees the pendant he gave her still around her neck, and he drops the power tool. Ash carries Linda into the woods and starts digging her grave, but her eyes open. She's still kicking, and she's still Demon Linda.
Oh, God.
Ash picks her up and puts her in the grave. He rests for a moment and then shovels dirt over her. When he finishes burying her, he starts to walk away, but he sees the pendant lying on top of the grave. As he goes to pick it up, her hand shoots out of the grave. She rockets out and shreds his leg. That's gross, too.
Yeah, it is.
He gets away and picks up a wood beam that he uses to beat the demon piss out of her. But she's finally had enough, and she seizes the beam and flings him across the yard.
Yeah. Yeah, she does.
As she goes after him again, Ash finds a shovel and decapitates her. Her head goes a-flying, but her body falls on him. As her severed head laughs, her body spits sludgy blood into his face from the neck.
So gross. No wonder this movie was rated NC-17.
No kidding.
Oh.
Ash frees himself from Demon Linda's body and goes back inside, where he finds that Demon Cheryl has also freed herself from the cellar.
Of course she has.
A door at the back of the living room creaks open and Ash creeps toward it. He picks up the shotgun and moves slowly through the cabin. He stops next to an open window and Demon Cheryl pops up, grabbing him. He shoots her in the face and barricades himself in the cabin, but she keeps on coming.
Yeah.
It's then that he realizes, though, he needs to find the box of shotgun shells. So it's back down to the cellar he goes.
Oh.
As he searches for the shells, he sees a pipe on the ceiling that is leaking blood.
Of course it is.
Gee.
Why wouldn't it be? I mean...
He steps under it, and the pipe gives way and showers him in blood.
Step under it, Ash. Just step right under there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't have enough blood on you.
The house seems to be hemorrhaging now as the sockets, walls, and the light bulbs begin bleeding too. A Victrola winds up and starts playing a record as a film projector comes to life and temporarily blinds Ash. Blood drips down over the projector lens and turns the light red.
It's really cool.
It is. Ash finds the shells and reloads the gun as he hears the voices of his friends and the professor from the tapes. He tells him to shut up. He heads back for the cellar stairs as the Victrola goes dead. The projector catches fire and dies, and the ceiling bulb flashes and explodes. Upstairs, the wall clock chimes, and it sounds like Big Ben. Ash is hearing all kinds of weird shit now, including a heartbeat. He opens a creaking door to look into the shed, but something's coming at him, so he closes it. Then the window shutters start banging.
And then this becomes really NC-17 film.
That's right. Got baby shutters on the way. The shutters stop as he moves towards the mirror on the wall. As he goes, he can hear himself passing under every single ceiling beam.
That's so weird.
It is weird. He approaches the mirror and reaches out to touch it, but his hand sinks into it. It's water. He pulls his hand back and screams at it.
That after everything that goes on in this sequence or in this movie, that's the thing that drives him over the edge.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh my God,
it's water.
It's water. And I need a shower.
Then there's something outside, and Ash fires a shot through the window, seemingly on instinct. The wind is howling outside, and it sounds like a wind tunnel. Ash hears a creak and reloads the shotgun. He hears footsteps going back and forth on the roof, and he almost laughs to himself. This is insane.
It's Santa Claus.
He reaches into his pocket and pulls out the pendant he gave to Linda. He looks at it and says her name, and then all the noises stop. The wind, the clock, it's all gone. Suddenly, two white demon hands burst through the door and grab his face. It's Demon Cheryl, and she's all, join us. Ash ain't having none of that, though. He blows a hole in her face, and she falls away from the door. He moves an old-school sewing machine in front of the door when Demon Scott sits up.
Oh, he's finally found his place.
Finally. His hair is powdery white, and his eyes are crazy, son. He grabs Ash from behind, and they wrestle. Demon Scott picks up Ash by the throat, but Ash pushes his thumb into Scott's demon-ass eyes.
Oh, God.
Ugh. Demon Scott drops him and howls in pain as Ash pulls out a stick lodged in the devil's side. That's gross, too.
Yes. That's also a gross check.
Yes. A waterfall of blood comes cascading out of Demon Scott. He falls to the floor, smoking like a bad head gasket.
Oh, so crazy.
Ash notices the Book of the Dead in front of the fireplace as Demon Cheryl blasts through the front door, and she's ready to rumble!
You ready for this?
She hands Ash an uppercut that sends him flying, and then she's heading for the fireplace.
Oh, she's after it.
She's after it. Get after it.
Get after it.
Ash crawls after her, but that blind Demon Scott is pawing at his legs. Ash's fingernails dig into the floorboard as Demon Scott pulls him back, but Ash finds Linda's pendant within his grasp, so he takes it. Demon Cheryl has grabbed a poker from the fireplace, and she's going back to show Ash what's what with it. Ash tries to use the pendant chain to latch onto the weird little flesh book as Demon Scott gnaws on his leg, and Demon Cheryl beats him like a government mule with the poker. Finally, the pendant catches, and Ash gets the book and throws it in the fire. The demons howl and start to fall apart as the book burns. Both Demon Cheryl and the book have long tongues that come out and swish around as they start dying.
So weird.
Everything is quiet now, and Demon Scott's deflated body seems to be expelling something along the lines of cream corn. So gross.
Yeah.
But Demon Cheryl is still making noises, like a gurgling moan. Suddenly, huge demon claws come shooting out of her chest and back, and out of Demon Scott's limp old corpse, too. Sludgy blood sprays into Ash's face.
Of course.
Cheryl's body completely falls apart, and she finally falls, covering Ash in more blood and guts. Roaches crawl out of Scott's corpse as it completely disintegrates. All that's left of Scott and Cheryl is green sludge. Ash stands slowly and realizes that the sun is coming up, and that he still has Linda's pendant. He walks outside and hears the birds singing, and he hobbles towards his car as another entity comes roaring from the woods, rips all the way through the house and out the front door, up to Ash, who turns and screams. Smash cut to black, and the credits roll.
That movie is incredible.
Rocks.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it's an incredibly gross movie, but I just love how they stack one horrifying moment on top of another, on top of another, on top of another.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Demon Scott's back up. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? You know,
Right.
Or here comes Cheryl. She's gotten out of the cellar. Of course she did.
Yeah.
How? Who gives a shit? Like, she's out. We got to deal with this. I love how he barricades himself in the house, even though most of the windows are broken.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know exactly what barricading yourself in the door.
Now
but
I'm
again,
safe.
But again, it's dream logic. You know,
Yeah.
like it's like that's what probably you or I would do in a dream. We would barricade the door, but the windows are broken, and somehow we think we're okay.
Yeah.
I guess that the end part of this was shot actually in Michigan, in Detroit, in this guy's basement. This guy's named Bart Pierce. And I think it took like 3 months to shoot this last scene with all the effects and the stop motion and all that stuff. That really was cream corn. Those were hissing cockroaches. They had garden snakes and all kinds of stuff. But I guess that they drove back to Michigan from Tennessee without a real ending for the movie. Like, I guess it wasn't shot.
Oh, weird.
Or they didn't. I don't know if they really knew what was happening or not. I mean, I guess they had some inkling because they shot where the entity rolls up on Ash after coming out of the house. But yeah, I think they had to get more money and then shoot the ending in 3 months in this guy's basement.
That's awesome.
What a movie. I mean, you can feel the hardship in every frame of this movie.
Yeah.
Just like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think is one of the things that makes that movie so effective and makes this movie so effective.
Right.
In the end, was it worth it? I don't know, but this is a great movie.
Well, they created a classic, so hopefully they at least get that satisfaction from it. Remake or Rembrandt?
It's already been remade.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be.
No.
So I never saw it. You saw that remake, right? I did.
I liked it all right. It's not. I didn't like it as well as this one, but it's good. Yeah.
Was it played more for camp than this one, or?
It's I believe, if I remember correctly, I've only seen it once, but if I remember correctly, it's more straightforward than this one. Because
this one's pretty straightforward, especially compared to the other two movies in this trilogy.
Yeah.
This was very straightforward.
Yeah.
But
it's also very disgusting and kind of disturbing at times, but Raimi produced it too, obviously.
Right.
So it's got a lot of the Raimi-isms in it, but no, it still didn't need to be remade though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And they'll probably remake it again.
Yeah. 5 years from now? It's I mean, whatever the 10th anniversary of the remake is, then they'll be like, we should reboot that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, definitely.
Just to be safe.
Well, you ready to move on to number 2?
Yeah. Probably to do a number 2 after number 2. All right, let's do that.
And now, intermission. Refreshment time.
2 minutes until showtime.
Let me tell you, life on campus is wild. So when my fraternity needs the kind of beer that will keep up with the action, we pick up Schlinay. Whether we're doing keg stands, shotgunning it straight from the can, or passing it from mouth to mouth like a mother bird to her baby, we drink Schlinay. Schlinay beer. Don't drink water. It'll rust your gut.
"90 seconds until showtime."
Coming soon to this drive-in theater.
The year 2000. America is a vast speedway. People line the streets to witness the greatest drivers on earth in a race from sea to shining sea.
This is a death race.
You finish first, or not at all. Death Race 2000. Every car a deadly weapon. Every spectator a potential point. cross-country road wreck, and the traffic is murder.
Who are you, anyway?
Best driver on Earth.
I don't want you to die.
He was built by the world's finest surgeons to drive the fastest car ever designed, and nothing can stop him now. Death Race 2000, rated R.
It's showtime.
And now, please enjoy our feature presentation.
Our next feature is the sequel to and the parody of the first feature. This is Evil Dead 2.
Dead by Dawn.
Legend has it that it was written by the Dark Ones, Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book served as a passageway to the evil worlds beyond. It was written long ago, when the seas ran red with blood. It was this blood that was used to ink the book. In the year 1300 AD, the book disappeared.
We open with Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, driving his Delta 88 through a mountain tunnel. His girlfriend Linda, played by Denise Bixler, is riding shotgun, and they are on their way to a romantic mountain cabin getaway. They cross a tall trestle bridge before arriving at the hideaway shack. Ash plays a pretty medley on the piano, while Linda pirouettes in her underwear.
Of course.
Ash is giving her a fancy necklace, and she loves it. He makes his move, wanting some dirty sex, but she's concerned that the owners of the cabin will return.
Why is she worried about the owners returning to the cabin if I thought driving up there, Ash gave her the lines that Scott had in the first one where he said, oh, well, the owner that we're renting it from says that it's a little run down, but it's in the mountains and it's cheap. But then she's afraid that they'll come back. Maybe I misheard his lines in the car or something.
I don't know.
The other thing is, I guess that all 5 of the characters from the first movie were supposed to be incorporated into the sequence, but the budget wouldn't let them do it.
Huh.
So they cut down to Ash and Linda, and she's obviously played by a different actress from the first film. But then elements of this sequence would be shot again for the little recap at the beginning of Army of Darkness, and it would be combined with some footage from Evil Dead 2. But in Army of Darkness, the part of Linda would be played very briefly by Bridget Fonda. I don't know. Linda's like the Spinal Tap drummer of the Evil Dead franchise.
Ash isn't concerned and offers her some champagne in sleazy fashion. As he goes to retrieve the bottle, he notices a reel-to-reel tape recorder and a book made out of flesh lying next to it. He fires up the recorder and hears a scary tale.
This is Professor Raymond Noby, Department of Ancient History, log entry number 2. I believe I have made a significant find in the castle of Kandar. Having journeyed there with my wife Henrietta, my daughter Annie, and Associate Professor Ed Getley. It was in the rear chamber of the castle that we stumbled upon something remarkable. Naturam de Monto, the Book of the Dead. My wife and I brought the book to this cabin, where I could study it undisturbed. It was here that I began the translations. The book speaks of a spiritual presence, a thing of evil that roams the forests and the dark bowers of man's domain. It is through the recitation of the book's passages that this dark spirit is given license to possess the living. Recorded here are the phonetic pronunciations of those passages. Kanda, Estrata, Amantos.
As the doctor is speaking the foreign tongue, the spirit that resides in the Necronomicon awakens and begins to bust ass toward the cabin.
Kanda. Amantos Kanda.
It busts through the window, grabs Linda, and takes her into the forest. Ash sees her missing and heads outdoors to have a look. This leads to jump scare number 1 as possessed Linda jumps from the shadows and dives toward Ash. He grabs a shovel that's lying on the ground, swings it, and lops off her head. He then digs a grave and places her stiffened body inside. Stiffened equals obvious mannequin.
Painfully obvious.
Yep. The entity whips through the forest once again, busting through the back door of the cabin, blazing through the house, and blasting through the front door. It grabs Ash and carries him through the trees, smacking his head on branches and pinwheeling him through the air. He finally smacks into a tree and falls face first into a large mud puddle. He lay face down in the puddle, blowing bubbles until he quickly raises his head up and we find that he's possessed. His eyes are stark white and his face is sunken in. He growls like an animal. The sun has risen and is seemingly unpossessing him. The fog reverses back into the trees and the ground, and the white covering his eyes dissipates. He goes shit-eyed, and the trauma causes him to pass out. Real quick, man, that scene with him pinwheeling through the air and smacking the branches and everything, that's awesome.
Oh, it's amazing.
That looks so cool.
It looked really cool. That's the Samo cam, I guess is what they call that. And that was...
Are they just making up these camera names as they
Yeah,
go?
they totally are. It's
that's
like
cool.
Samo cam. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I guess that was like a camera crane with Sam Raimi sitting at the top behind the camera with a joystick. And then there's the camera. And then Bruce Campbell was basically strapped to a metal X. And the joystick that Raimi was moving around would move Campbell back and forth.
Yeah.
So he was like, Campbell joked that he was like Raimi's Game Boy for a day. He was just like careening him all over the place. And I guess that they had to shoot that little scene there in South Carolina. They shot a lot of this in North Carolina, some of it in Michigan, I think. And then they shot that little scene right there in South Carolina because they needed a stretch of country road that had the trees there just enough that they could, use it for the sequence. But they needed somewhere it was flat. It was like a mile stretch of road.
Huh.
So, yeah. I mean, they were shooting in North Carolina because of Dino De Laurentiis. I don't know if he was based there or if he shot a lot of his movies there for tax breaks or what.
Mm-hmm.
They actually got hooked up with Dino De Laurentiis to get the money for this movie because Stephen King was in North Carolina shooting Maximum Overdrive.
Oh, yeah.
And he heard that they needed money for Evil Dead 2, so he had dinner with Dino De Laurentiis and said, hey, give these guys the money for this movie. So he did, but then I guess contractually for some reason De Laurentiis wasn't allowed to release an NC-17 movie, which is what this one was, or would end up being, and so that's why you see the Rosebud releasing animation at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That company doesn't really exist. It was just put on there because De Laurentiis couldn't release it under the name of his company, which I think it was like DEG or something at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, Stephen King actually had a lot to do with both of these movies. Like the first movie was getting some looks and people kind of liked it, but it really picked up traction. And I think it might have even gotten distribution, possibly, once Stephen King said that gave it like this great review and said it was like the most original horror film he had ever seen or something like that.
Yeah.
They ended up putting that on the posters and stuff, but she was really helpful to them.
He can get his endorsement, then that's a good thing. Time passes and Ash awakens with a start. He's still half in the puddle and confused. His eyes pan the clearing, the cabin, the Delta 88, and then back to him. He reckons with himself that the demon has disappeared with the rise of the sun. A voice from the house tells Ash to join us. Ash is all like, hell no. And he hops in the Delta and tears Ash down the dirt road as you would. He arrives at the bridge and slams on his brakes. The bridge has been destroyed, the trestles rolled up at the ends like claws. Ash is not happy.
Ah! Oh, God. Oh, no. No!
Ash looks to the sky and sees that the sun is setting rapidly. The entity rises from the remnants of the bridge and starts to cut a path toward Ash. He hops in the Delta and throws it in reverse. The entity is hot on his trail. He whips the car around so that he's driving forward and he re-enters the darkness of the forest. The sky blackens with every rotation of the wheels. Ash panics and drives through the woods until he hits a stump and goes flying through the front windshield. He hops to his feet and runs toward the house, cut up and bloodied. He runs into the house, the entity right on his heels. For every door he closes, the entity splinters it. Ash himself runs through a door or two before ultimately disappearing in the living room. The entity looks left, the entity looks right. Doesn't see Ash and exits the house back into the forest. Ash somehow manages to hide in a cellar hatch in the living room floor.
So weird.
Yeah.
I do.
You cannot quickly do that.
No. I mean, you could actually see in the camera move that of the entity POV. There's no way he got in there.
Not a chance.
But I love that chase through the house.
That's great.
That's so cool. And I like that he goes in behind the wall and then comes out. I mean, I was disappointed that it wasn't something that was setting up the house to be used a bit more. Like when I was a kid, I kind of thought, oh, they're setting up this house. We didn't see the part behind the wall in the first one. That's incredible. Like I can't wait for them to use that again. And then they just never did. It just was there and then it was gone. And, there's a fine history of horror movies that take place inside inside walls.
The little alley between the walls. I think it's so cool and so frightening all at the same time.
Yeah. I always just kind of envision that rats are building neighborhoods in there, And we do kind of get a Tom and Jerry sequence later in this movie. So, with a hand, obviously.
Right.
But, I thought that was really cool. Sometime we're going to have to talk about that Tobe Hooper, I think it was an update of a movie called The Toolbox Murders, which pretty much a lot of that takes place inside the walls of a huge apartment building.
Yeah.
Which I think is just fascinating. So it's almost like there is this world within a world,
Yeah.
And there are tons of real stories of people living in attics and living in the walls of old houses and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a movie that we once covered, and that episode will never escape the vault. But that also involved a man making dirty phone calls from inside a wall in a big house. If you know bad movies well enough, you'll know what movie we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
you'll realize why we didn't release it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie itself wasn't released. It escaped. I mean, it was. Whew. The breaking of the back car window in this sequence where he hits the tree and then the camera goes through the back window.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a version of the Ramo cam, although it's like an iron pole version of the Ramo cam because the one that was used on the house windows was wooden. With the battering ram. This was an iron version. So, and I think they went through like 6 windshields doing that.
Oh, man.
This car has been in almost every Sam Raimi movie. It's Raimi's car, this old Delta is. He calls it like the classic or something like that, or the old classic or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is his car. And Campbell often jokes about how his mission in life is to kill it, like to try to kill this car.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I guess if you look around, you'll probably see this in Sam Raimi movies. People who are listening to this are probably like, yeah, no kidding, bud. You already knew it. Thanks. Why do you have a podcast, you idiot?
We're just doing what we can, folks.
Yeah.
We're a couple of humble podcasters is all we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Humble podcasters.
Humble podcasters.
People are like, why don't you go back to showing skin flicks in your garage, dummy?
Well, we can do that too. Hell,
Well, Jikey gets real upset about that, Remember we had tried to do that extra thing out behind the projection shack on Tuesday nights, and it was just a no-go with him. I'm like,
Jikey's got his own skeletons.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
A small plane has arrived at an airport, and Dr. Noby's daughter, Annie Noby, played by Sarah Berry, disembarks the plane. She's greeted by Ed Getley, played by Richard Domier, you just take your pick, her boyfriend and partner. She has just returned from an expedition where she has recovered some missing pages from the Necronomicon and an ancient dagger. They need to start translating them. She asks if Ed has spoken to her father, and he says he hasn't been able to reach him in a week.
Hang on a second. You forgot to name check another character in this scene.
What's that?
Ed's hair.
Le coiffe.
That is something.
Yeah,
I mean, that is straight up 87.
Yeah, it is.
Like, basically, if you made this movie in 86 or 88, you couldn't get that hairstyle.
It's a strong feathering job he's got going on.
Strong feathering. The crater up top, right in the middle.
Yeah.
And then baby mullet in the back, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's blonde.
We like to call that the trifecta.
It really, I mean, it is. He really just runs all the bases with that haircut. Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, man.
I was happy for him.
I am, too. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Ash is out of the cellar and hears a noise, so he goes to inspect it. The piano begins to play itself, and it reminds him of Linda. He looks at her necklace and begins to sob. Just not paying attention to the piano playing by itself, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, sure, let's play our piano in an old cabin in the middle of the woods.
But the entity has returned, and Linda rises from the grave. A stop-motion animation sequence begins as her skeletal body begins to dance, and she rolls her head up and down her arms like a Harlem Globetrotter. Yeah. With a leap, she sails into the air and disappears. Ash watches her through the boarded-up window until she jump scares into the frame and tries to pull him through the window, banging his head against the boards. Her head falls off her body, and Ash screams. But then we see that he's imagined it all sitting in a chair, or so we thought. Linda's head lands in his lap and says, "Hello, lover," and she sinks her teeth into his hand and won't let go. He bangs her head against the tables and walls, trying to remove it from his hand. He then decides to go out to the tool shed. He puts her head in a vise and gives it a twist. She releases her bite, and the demon speaks.
Even now we have your darling Linda's soul. She suffers in torment.
You're going down. Chainsaw.
Okay, I gotta do Russell Bomb here really fast.
Okay.
So Campbell's working on Escape from L.A.
Yeah, he is.
And he meets Kurt Russell. And from what he says, I think one of the first things that Kurt Russell said to him was, just say, work shed.
That's awesome.
Because if you listen to the way he says it in this movie, he sounds a little bit like Snake Plissken.
Yeah.
He says, work shed. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny. Also, the shed sequence like we were talking about in the previous film, the Freddy glove is right above the door, hanging over the door in this little sequence. The dance, I don't know.
That's weird.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I think the thing about it was that it wasn't seamless enough as a special effect to really kind of get me into it.
Right.
I was always kind of arm's length from it because it was obviously a special effect.
It was obviously a Barbie doll, you know?
Yeah. I guess the dancer who did that, her name was like Snowy Winters, I think was her name.
Sounds like a real name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. I'd love to see her license. And then she flies away kind of like she's in one of those Rankin and Bass Rudolph specials, you know?
Yeah.
I'll lead the sleigh.
Yeah.
She thinks I'm cute. But I don't know, dude. I don't know. It kind of brought to mind the dance sequence from whichever, like Spider-Man 3 or something, where there was some crazy weird dance sequence that Raimi put in there. I don't know. The story stuff bothered me in the beginning, but the dance thing was where I started kind of to go, okay, am I really on board with this movie?
I enjoy this movie. Somebody has to enjoy it since you obviously don't.
God,
and you won't shut up about it.
Oh, come on. I said that like twice in the last 30 seconds. Okay? God, get off my ass.
He reaches for a chainsaw, but it's missing from the wall. That's kind of funny, actually.
I like the chalk outline.
Yeah. Well, think about the first movie, too, where he whips the thing back and there's the chainsaw.
Yeah.
And this time he whips it back. It's not there, but there's the chalk outline. That's pretty funny.
That's pretty funny.
I didn't even realize that till now. That's good. Linda's headless body runs in with the chainsaw and tries to attack Ash. He hits the chainsaw with a crowbar, and it kicks back and begins to saw into her neck, spraying black blood into Ash's face. Her body falls to the floor, and he grabs the chainsaw, pulling her arm off in the process. He then turns the chainsaw toward her severed head. Her clouded eyes have cleared, and he sees the Linda that he loved, begging him not to use the saw. As he struggles over what to do, the possessed Linda takes back over, and he snaps out of it and saws her head in half, slinging blood all over the tool shed. Tool shed.
Work shed. Just say work shed. Campbell's always said that Ash is an idiot.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. Because, like, he's sitting there looking at her, and it's her face, and she's like, please don't use the saw. And he has a second guess, and I'm like, her head is talking to you without a body from a vice.
Right.
Just you. It doesn't matter what the face looks like at this point. We're far beyond her being normal Linda ever again. Yeah. Okay. This guy's an idiot.
He's a dummy. Ash stumbles out of the shed and back into the cabin. He tosses the chainsaw and grabs a shotgun. A rocking chair is rocking on its own. He reaches out to stop it, but then gets a funny feeling and walks over to a mirror. He tells himself he's fine until his reflection lunges through the mirror and grabs him by the throat. He tries to get away until he realizes that he's choking himself, not his reflection. He then looks down at his hand, and it appears to be cracking like broken pavement. He holds his hand up to his face, and it attacks him. His hand is possessed, son!
You bastards! You dirty bastard!
He pins his hand to the ground with his other hand. We cut to Annie and Ed driving to the cabin and coming to a stop at the blown-out bridge. A redneck couple, Jake and Bobby Joe, played by Dan Hicks and Cassie Wesley respectively, are there, and Jake is setting up a roadblock. Another goddamn Bobby Joe.
This Bobby Joe, I think you'll appreciate her a little bit more when I tell you who she was based on.
Okay.
She was inspired by Holly Hunter.
Okay.
So Sam Raimi lived with either one or both of the Coens and Frances McDormand and Holly Hunter in the early 80s in, I think, Hollywood.
Wow.
And he said that Holly Hunter would be just there on the couch reading scripts and stuff because she was, you know, an actor too, and she was going on auditions.
Yeah.
Well, one day she was dressed up kind of like a prostitute to go for this audition. And so it was different for her. And so Raimi looks at her and says, "Oh, hey, you look nice today." And she just jumped all over him about it. She's like, "I'm dressed up like a prostitute." He's like, from that time on, when I started thinking about Bobby Joe, I thought of Holly Hunter. And I guess they wanted her for that part, but the studio said that they wanted somebody sexier for it. So I'm like,
God.
well, okay. I mean, whatever.
There ain't nothing wrong with Holly Hunter.
No.
Not a thing.
She's so great. I couldn't believe it. All those people were living in the same house.
The first time I saw this movie, I got kind of excited when I saw Cassie Wesley because she was on Days of Our Lives, or not Days of Our Lives, but As the World Turns for a little bit.
I know how you love your stories.
I do love my stories.
And when you name check Dan Hicks, I almost said, "and his hot licks."
Yeah.
Whoa, that's years of record store work, son.
After some back and forth, Annie asks if there is a back way to get to the cabin, and Jake says that there is, and he'll take her there for a Benjamin. She says if he takes her bags, then he's got a deal. He looks in the back of her car and sees a satchel and a glass frame with the pages in it. He agrees, giggling like a hillbilly idiot. Little does he know that she has a steamer trunk, too.
Yeah.
Back at the cabin, the war between Ash and his hand begins in a truly hysterical display of physical comedy. The hand smashes dishes over Ash's head and flips him to the floor and smashes more dishes until he's unconscious. The hand sees a meat cleaver and begins to drag Ash's body toward it. Campbell is such a great physical comedian.
Yeah, he is.
This was pre-Jim Carrey, and it's obvious that Carrey took some cues from Campbell when he filmed the scene in Liar Liar where he's beating himself up in the courthouse bathroom.
Yeah. That's great.
Before the hand can grab the cleaver, Ash plunges a knife into the hand and reaches for a chainsaw with his other hand.
That's right. Who's laughing now?
Ash 1, hand 0.
I love the "who's laughing now" line.
Yeah.
Who's laughing now as he cuts his own hand off. This is an incredible scene.
It is.
The flip, when he flips himself over onto the floor.
Yeah.
That made my back hurt. I mean,
know.
And I think that's him.
I think it's totally him, yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
They were talking about how those plates and stuff were unfired, so you could just like knock yourself over the head with them.
Yeah.
But they look like a full piece. They hadn't been fired and killed, so they were soft enough. But I imagine some of that still hurt. I can't imagine it not hurting.
That's weird. It just wasn't sugar glass. I kind of thought that's what it probably was.
No, I think it was some sort of unfired plaster. I think.
Huh. Meanwhile, Annie and the crew hike the woods, and Jake bitches all the way carrying the steamer on his back. The hand lay on its top side, writhing and squealing. Ash puts a trash can over the top of it and then sets a stack of books on top of it. A Farewell to Arms sits atop the stack. Wah, wah. As Ash bandages his stump with a cloth and duct tape, the hand manages to escape and has scurried across the floor into a mouse hole in the wall. Ash loads up the shotgun and begins to shoot into the wall, hoping to take out the haunted appendage. The hand taunts him as he reloads. It climbs up into the wall and is scurrying around. Ash takes a shot and hears the hand scream in agony. Blood begins to trickle down the wall from the hole, but then suddenly rushes out like a fire hose, blasting Ash in the face.
Of course it does.
Yeah. Once it stops, Ash stumbles around and collapses into a chair. The chair breaks and he lands on the floor. A mounted deer head turns its wide-eyed gaze at Ash and begins to laugh maniacally. That's creepy.
Yeah.
Then the lamp laughs, and the books, basically the whole room.
Yeah.
Ash begins to laugh with it as he's losing his shit. He hears something outside and shoots the gun through the boarded window. A lady's voice screams and the laughter stops.
I love the laughing room scene.
Yeah.
I just love that.
To me, that's really scary.
It is. And to me, there's something different about the tone of that scene than most of the other slapsticky stuff in the movie. It feels darker in a way that kind of eludes the rest of the movie, in my opinion. I do feel like the slapsticky stuff in the kitchen with the plates and stuff in the hand, I think that's pretty funny, and I think it does kind of fit in with this laughing room tone, you know? I don't know, the little Tom and Jerry sequence of him shooting at the hand on the wall, kind of like, whatever.
If it wasn't for the noises the hand makes, though, I think it would be more of a throwaway scene, but the hand's noise is it's hilarious.
Yeah, I think that's Raimi making those noises.
Oh, is it?
I think it is, yeah. But the laughing room scene is great.
Yeah.
And when he starts kind of bobbing up and down, laughing along with him, that's when things really get, like, you're like, okay, this guy's going south here. This guy's losing ground mentally, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so the blood that hits him in the face, I guess that was the scene where they tilted the house, because this house was built in a gymnasium.
Yeah.
So he's basically kind of laying on this diving board type thing.
Oh, really?
Because this is the scene where the blood comes out, right? And you can they show like the blood hole, and it kind of looks like it's going along the ceiling and then dripping down.
Yeah.
It's because it is on a ceiling, and it's just kind of gushing down on top of him.
Oh, wow.
And he said that every time he blew his nose for like 3 weeks, the snot was always red.
Gross.
Yeah. I mean, imagine how much Karo syrup and other kind of latex and all kinds of shit that guy's liver's dealing with. I mean, you know,
kidding.
His liver's down there like, we can't make fuel out of it, or, you know, we can't get rid of this. I don't know what to do.
If you've watched any of Ash versus the Evil Dead, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting a face full of blood or whatever in every single episode, pretty much.
Yeah.
Ash opens the door, and after a long pause, Jake dives through the door and lands on Ash and begins to beat the shit out of him. The gun blast has grazed Bobby Joe's arm. Annie comes in and sees the bloody chainsaw on the floor and freaks out on Ash, wanting to know what he did to her parents. Jake says that they should lock him in the cellar and drags Ash in that direction.
He put everybody in the cellar.
Yeah, no shit.
Let's just lock this kid in the cellar.
He kicks Ash down the stairs into the cellar. As Jake tends to Bobby Joe's wound, Annie plays the recorder and discovers that her father unleashed the demon after translating the passages from the Necronomicon. It possessed his wife, and he was forced to kill her. He buried her in the earthen floor of the cellar. Ash hears this, and like clockwork, Mama, played by Ted Raimi, busts through the floor. Mama wants to swallow Ash's soul. He backs up the cellar steps to the hatch, screaming for help. Her face transforms into a demon, and Jake pulls Ash up through the cellar door. The demon pokes its head out of the cellar door and reaches its long arm up and grabs Ed's face and flings him headfirst into the wall. Ed smashes the demon's head between the cellar door and the floor and begins to stomp. The demon's eyeball shoots from its face and ends up in Bobby Joe's mouth.
Oh, God.
Ed and Ash kick the demon down into the cellar and chain the door shut. Things calm down, and Ash tells him a story.
There's something out there. That witch in the cellar is only part of it. It lives out in those woods. In the dark. Something that's come back from the dead.
Jake, please, let's get the hell out of here.
We're going, baby. We're going to get on there. Nobody goes out that door. Not till daylight. You listen to me.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word.
Annie's mama appears under the cellar door.
That mockingbird don't sing. Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. That diamond ring turns brass. Mama's gonna buy you a looking glass. Remember that song, Annie? I used to sing it to you when you were a baby. Mother, unlock these chins. Quickly.
Annie wants to free Mama, but Ash stops her.
No. You were born September 2nd, 1962. I remember it well because it was snowing. So strange it would be snowing in September.
That thing in the cellar is not my mother.
Ed is possessed.
We are the things that were and shall be again. Snatch of the book. We want what is yours.
Life! Dead by dawn!
Dead by dawn!
Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn!
Dead by dawn!
Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn!
Ed attacks Bobby Joe and rips out a big clump of her hair with his teeth. Mama Demon wants out. Ed knocks Jake out, and Ash leaves and returns with an axe and chops up poor Ed as green blood splatters everywhere.
I guess that they used the green blood because they were trying to avoid the NC-17 rating. It ended up not mattering anyway. The introduction of Mama is fantastic.
Yeah.
That was so scary.
Yeah, it was.
Just so scary. God bless poor Ted Raimi.
Yeah.
Later on, there's going to be a scene where you will see firsthand on film how much this man was sweating inside that suit. But I heard that they were taking off the boots, like the booties that he wore, and pouring the sweat into Dixie cups out of that every day.
Gross.
He was sweating so, because it was like 100 and some degrees in North Carolina outside. And so inside the gymnasium where they built this set, it was like 110 or something.
Jesus.
Yeah, because, you think they have all that lighting. They're inside. It's summer outside. They can't necessarily have the air on because of the sound.
Yeah.
And then this guy is... Every part of him is covered in something, like latex.
Heavy latex.
Yeah.
And the bodysuit he's wearing is practically a fat suit.
Yeah.
He's a skinny dude. And, it's a really heavy-looking suit.
I feel for the guy.
Yeah.
As much as I feel for the actors from the first one, I don't know. I don't know what's worse.
Yeah.
I think they probably still had it yet a bit worse just because this was a higher budget affair, but... I don't know. I don't think maybe I shouldn't compare torture levels in these films.
Jake looks out the window and realizes that the trail they hiked is now gone. Like the witch just swallowed her up. The clock's pendulum stops swinging and it grows deathly quiet. The entity is trying to force its way into their world as the roaring sound zips through the cabin and things move on their own. The editing in the sound here is incredible.
Yeah.
If you're listening to it through headphones and stereo, like it's all over the place. It's very, very good. The Blu-ray transfer of that's really, really nice. Very sonic.
Yeah, definitely.
And then watching it on screen too, it's just there's a lot of like quick edits and extreme close-ups on weird things like a ceiling beam. It's really just bizarre to watch.
Yeah.
But it sounds so cool.
It's very cool.
Suddenly a door creaks open. Ash moves toward the door alone, but Andy grabs a lantern and volunteers to go with him. They enter the room and a scared Jake and Bobby Joe enter behind them, and Jake grasps Bobby Joe's hand. A floating face that looks like the face of death from The Exorcist appears before them. It's Annie's father telling them that their only salvation lies within the text in the missing pages of the book that she found on her expedition. Recite the passages, dispel the evil. His face disappears in a screeching roar.
What did you think about that? I thought it was kind of a cool effect.
A little hokey considering what they'd done throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to...
You can't hold back your disdain for this movie.
Well, the thing is that there are so many things about the movie I really do like. I do kind of like this scene, but nothing fits together. It did when I was younger.
Yeah.
This time it just didn't for some reason.
Maybe it's because you turned into a crank.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
You know what? You might have just found it. That might have been the key. Jackass.
Yeah. Bobby Joe tells Jake that he's holding her hand too tight. He says he isn't holding her hand. Guess who's back?
Oh, yeah.
Ash's severed hand. The lantern goes out and Bobby Joe escapes into the woods, screaming the whole way, naturally. She stops at a clearing and the trees come to life. Vines begin to wrap her up and pierce into her face. A long vine drags her through the forest and into a large tree. Luckily, it didn't rape her this time.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Gotta avoid that NC-17 rating.
Yeah. Smash cut to the glass box that holds the missing pages shattering on the floor. Jake agonizes over Bobby Joe, and Ash says if she went into the woods, she's a goner. And he begins to translate the pages.
It's that picture. What is that?
In 1300 AD, they called this man the hero from the sky. He was prophesied to have destroyed the evil.
Didn't do a very good job. Can you find it?
Here it is. 2 passages. Recitation of this first passage will make this dark spirit manifest itself in the flesh.
Why the hell would we want to do that?
Recitation of the second passage creates a kind of rift in time and space, and the physical manifestation of this dark spirit can be forced back into the rift. At least that's the best translation that I can...
Huh? That's right. I'm running this show now.
Before we continue, it should be noted that the drawing of the hero of the skies shows a man in a button-down blue shirt, dark pants, and a chainsaw for a hand. Looks much like our hero, Ash, but, we'll get there.
Man, I mean, talk about spoiling the ending.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
I know.
You're spoiling it right in the middle, dude.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
No kidding.
No, what are you doing? I'm talking about you.
Me?
Yeah, you're giving it away.
Oh.
Just handing it over.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the movie giving
No,
it
I'm
away.
talking about you.
Cut it out then.
No.
All right.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think if you see it,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I mean, if you see it in the movie, he doesn't yet have a chainsaw for a hand, does he? So
Not yet.
I guess you could have described it, but didn't say that it looked like Ash. I mean, we need a little mystery. We do tell them we're going to spoil these movies, but
Well, let's just cut it out then.
no, it's okay. We'll just leave it in. I want people to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit. I don't want them to think you're quite as polished as you come off.
Yeah, I'm polished, obviously. Yeah.
This has only taken us 6 hours to record.
I'm real polished for a guy who talks like he's got a swollen tongue.
I often talk like it's my first day on the new tongue, and I didn't buy the warranty.
Yeah. Jake points a shotgun at Annie and Ash. He says that they are going back out into the woods to find Bobby Joe. Ash contends that they need to try to figure out how to stay alive, and the pages may be the key. Jake calls bullshit, snatches the pages away, and tosses him into the cellar. Okay.
He passes the fire. If he was really all that upset about it, he would have thrown him in the fireplace. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Roaring fire.
Here, go get him, asshole.
Yeah, jump in there.
He forces them outside. Ash isn't moving fast enough for his liking, so Jake pops Ash in the back of the head with the rifle barrel.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. They head toward the forest and the trees creak and moan. Jake screams for Bobby Joe. Ash tries to calm Jake down, but Jake hits Ash in the gut with a gun stock and pushes Annie to the ground. He screams again for Bobby Joe, but gets the entity instead in the form of a possessed Ash. Ash gorilla presses Jake above his head and lawn darts him into a tree head first. Annie runs back into the cabin. Ash jump scares the cowboy shit out of her and us and appears in the doorway yelling, "Join us!" She flees to another room and grabs the ancient dagger, which looks like it was once a spinal cord. Someone fiddles with the doorknob. Annie readies with the dagger, but when she opens the door, she plunges the dagger into the gut of Jake.
Oh, no.
Ash jump scares us again in the window behind her, and she quickly grabs Jake and pulls him into another room. A screaming Annie shuts the back door to the cabin and blocks it with her body as Ash tries to push through, but then he abruptly stops. She leaves the door and pulls a dagger out of Jake's gut and drags him into another room as he screams in agony. She leaves him close enough to the cellar door that Haunted Mama reaches out and grabs him, dragging him halfway into the cellar. Annie holds his legs, but then a tidal wave of blood gushes out and saturates Annie. That's important.
Yeah.
She lets go, and the rest of Jake ends up in the cellar.
Yeah.
Annie stands up after being fire hosed with blood and has a splattering of blood on her shoulders and arms of the shirt, but she's clean otherwise. Hair still perfect. She just needs to spray some Zout on that shirt, and she'll be good
That's
as
right.
new.
That's right. Just get one of those little Tide pins.
Oh, my God.
You know, protein gets out protein, son.
Yeah. I mean, come on. If Campbell gets to run around soaked in blood through the whole movie, she should be able to do it as well, you know?
I think he said that, like, it when they were in North Carolina, it was so hot that he insisted on using the same Caro's syrup mix that they used in the first one for some stupid reason.
Yeah.
And he said that he actually, like, would have to sleep with a fly swatter because that stuff would just be all over him and the flies would be on him. And so you'd have
gross.
to. Yeah. He said he couldn't figure out why he wanted to use that. Mixture because he didn't have to.
No kidding.
But, yeah. Ugh.
Ash pops up roaring and gorilla presses Annie, throwing her into the wall. He finds Linda's necklace and clutches it. Haunted Ash gets sad and begins to cry. He wails and falls to the floor in sadness. As he lifts himself back up, he's no longer haunted. An ignorant Annie swings an axe and nearly sinks it into his face. He rushes her and tosses her to the floor, saying that he's all right. She takes another swing of the axe, and then he finally convinces her that he's all right. It's time to go into the cellar and get the pages. It's back to the tool shed. Ash rigs up his chainsaw and attaches it to his stump, and then saws the barrel off of the shotgun, creating his iconic look. A wave of confidence sweeps over him. He looks stoically into the distance and exclaims,
Groovy.
Ash cuts the cellar door in half with the chainsaw and kicks it in. He proceeds down the ladder with the saw idling. Ash quickly finds the pages and backs up the ladder and tosses him to Annie. As he's climbing the ladder, Mama grabs his legs and sends him face first into the cellar floor. Annie starts to speak the text from the pages aloud, and things grow instantly silent. Annie walks toward the cellar, and Mama rises through the air screaming. She grabs Annie by the hair and pinwheels above her head. Ash comes out of the cellar and calls out to Mama that it's time to get on. Mama's head distorts and her neck stretches out. The face becomes demonic again. A fight between the demon and Ash ensues in a Harryhausen-like stop-motion animation. The demon almost gets the better of Ash when Annie distracts it by singing the Mockingbird song. Ash starts swinging the chainsaw and cuts off the head of the demon. Mama has some last words for Ash, but his shotgun has the final word.
Hey, I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul.
Swallow this.
Okay, so when Mama's pinwheeling, like hanging from the ceiling,
yeah,
and she turns to look at Ash when he says something to her, that's the point where you see this long stream of sweat dripping out of the ear. And that is all Ted Raimi. That substance was made by Ted Raimi. Came out the ear. So disgusting.
That poor guy.
That poor dude. It's terrible.
I hope he's replenished those fluids since then.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh.
Knowing that her mother is finally dead, Annie begins to sob and Ash comforts her. But then all hell breaks loose. The entity causes trees to uproot and comes to life. They begin to destroy the cabin. Annie says that she didn't get to finish the translation of the pages. She needs to read the page that will open the rift to send the evil back. The entity's face fills the doorway in horrific fashion. It scares Ash so badly that a streak of gray appears in his hair. Annie begins to read, but Ash's severed hand stabs her in the back with the ancient dagger. The entity grabs Ash and begins to pull him toward its chomping mouth. Annie takes a last shot at the translation before dying and opens up a black hole in the sky. Ash exclaims that she did it, but the door flings off the cabin and sucks Ash and the Delta-88 into the rift. Moments later, Ash and the Delta hit the ground in a strange land. Ash opens his eyes to see that he is surrounded by men in suits of armor. He has arrived in 1300 AD. They prepare to stab him with their swords, but a flying demon descends upon them. As the armored men scurry, Ash pulls out his boomstick and blows the head off the demon. He is the hero of the skies in the ancient pages. The men take a knee and begin to hail him as a hero.
Hail he who has come from the skies to deliver us from the terrors of the Deadites! Hail! 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 No! Hail! No! Hail! No!
It's funny that they hail him in the end of this movie. At the beginning of Army of Darkness, same thing happens, except it's shot with more color, and he's enslaved, and there's no demon.
Yeah.
I get mad because, this had a good beginning, and there was a trilogy here with these three movies.
Yeah.
But they're restarting and stuff just because, some stupid studio like Universal says, oh, well, we're in a feud with Dino De Laurentiis, so we want this Army of Darkness to be a standalone movie. But they still have footage in it from Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
But to completely change the story, do a complete 180 from what they had, the Knights are worshiping him at the end of Evil Dead 2, in the beginning of Army of Darkness, he's enslaved.
Yeah.
It's just so stupid.
Yeah.
I did love the way the ending was shot, and I even like the Harryhausen type demon that comes flying over. I thought that was fine. There's a lot to love in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
It just didn't add up for me. And I honestly think watching them back to back hindered my experience of the movies, or my experience of the second movie. So,
yeah.
But that's just me.
I feel like in a lot of ways they're two completely different movies. They've got that thread and they've got a lot of the same beats and some of the same scenes. But it's just such a drastically different movie than the first one.
Yeah, and I think in a way I think you're right. In a way, I guess it comes down to which style you appreciate more.
Right.
I mean, I think ultimately I just appreciate the style of the first movie more.
Yeah, I get that.
I could see how people would appreciate this and Army of Darkness more and Ash versus the Evil Dead more. I could totally understand that.
Right.
It's just not my thing.
You're just a crank.
Yeah. Well, I am. I mean, are you new here? How long have you worked at this place, man? Have you gotten out of your probation period? Do you start getting benefits soon?
So we both agree that it's a Rembrandt. I think it's a Rembrandt for good. You think it's a Rembrandt for not good?
Well, no. I mean, I think it's a Rembrandt because if they, I don't think it should be remade, just like I don't think the first one should have been remade.
Right.
See, I can't really see, and obviously I haven't seen the remake of the first one, but I can't really see a path for them making the Middle Ages version of the story.
Yeah.
Like the Army of Darkness part of it.
Yeah.
I can't see it, but since I haven't seen the remake, then maybe there is a path to it. I just don't know what it would be in this day and age.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be without it being a complete goof fest.
Right. I don't know who they could get to play Ash in this type of comedy role either. I mean, unless you're Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey's too old to be Ash at this point, there's really nobody doing what he did in this movie.
Campbell's so specific.
Yeah.
He's just so specific.
Yeah.
He's got such a specific look. It's kind of weird. He's almost like some sort of like throwback hero, especially in this movie.
Right.
He's got a very kind of late 50s, early 60s movie hero look to him.
Superman.
Yeah. He always jokes that if you look at this movie and watch it, you can see that they shot most of the early stuff out of order. So he's skinny in some scenes and bulky in the other, because he was bulking up as this movie was going on, because he needed to be kind of bulky to have like the hero body, or at least a kind of a ripped version of him.
Yeah.
For the end. So, as the movie goes on, you see this guy kind of get buffer and buffer, but he's still very specific. Like, his ability to do slapstick, can you imagine some buff action hero being able to do that? Like,
No.
I can't,
No.
Think of somebody like Stallone trying to do that. Have you seen Stop or My Mom Will Shoot? Or Rhinestone?
Oh, Lord.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oof.
That wasn't slapstick comedy, but, well, neither one was slapstick comedy. But
Well, he's singing in it, so it might as well be a comedy.
It's true. It might as well be slapstick. Somebody's going to be slapping somebody if he's singing. But anyway. All right. Well, Rembrandt.
Hi, Nathan.
Happy birthday, Nathan. Join us.
Join us.
Workshed.
Thank you for joining us at the All Night Drive-In Picture Show. We hope you enjoyed our double feature this evening. You can follow us on social media at the All Night Drive-In Picture Show page on Facebook, or at All Night Drive-In on Twitter and Instagram. If you have questions, comments, or movie requests, you can send them to our email address at allnightdriveинpictureshow@gmail.com. Join us next week for another fantastic double feature, and until then, we appreciate your patronage. Don't forget to hang up your speaker, and please drive carefully on your way out.
The All Night Drive-In Picture Show is edited and produced by Markham Harvey. Our theme song is composed and performed by Lee Rosevere and edited by The Night Watch. Our head ticket taker is Stubbs Jorgensen. Our snack bar manager is Lucy Slewfoot. Our sign master is Jason Baldwin. Our drive-in manager is the one and only George Jaike. I'm your announcer, Lane Hewitt. This has been a Clown Business Coalition production. Good night, everyone.